ask anybody's question but yours. You're an idiot. And really a disloyal person.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Disloyal Idiots Podcast. Now trying to fund Syracuse's new champagne purchasing decisions that they'd have to make to send to Columbus, Ohio. Christian Guzman here alongside Steve Haller and Andy Pregler. Gentlemen, how much champagne do you think Syracuse has on stock?
All of the champagne, it seems, the way this is going. We're 2 for 2 on references. I just rolled in from Hibachi, though it wasn't in the dome, so we're doing good all around here.
What are you?
Ferrari in the dome?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
but
I was gonna say you don't have a Ferrari around, do you?
If we don't do a fundraiser next off season, like a big booster NIL fundraiser with Hibachi in the dome, like what are we doing here, guys? Like, come on.
It probably bears, that probably is a big missed opportunity. As usual, for those living under a rock, Syracuse knocked off its first ranked opponent since a Devin Leary-less ranked NC State in 2022, which was what allowed Syracuse to go bowl eligible, which also happened to be the last Syracuse win of said season as well, but we can gloss over that.
Well, no, but it did continue the trend of Syracuse plays NC State and stupid happens.
Which is probably what's going to happen later this year as well. We can get to those at various different times, but Syracuse this past weekend, a lot of reason to celebrate a win over number 23 Georgia Tech, the team that has infamously already started to send Florida State to its grave because that's funny. 31-28 is your final score. And again, if you lived under a rock, this is a game that was not as close on paper as it actually was on the score sheet. Or I should say, not as close on the field as it was on the score sheet because of special teams, which we will also get to. To change it up.
Special for the record. If anybody wants the Cliff Notes, special teams were not special in any way, shape, or form.
We started with the bad last week. And I don't think it's appropriate to start with that this week because of how much good there actually was this week. And let's start with let's start with what the title of this damn episode was. Kyle McCord had another record-setting day.
Yeah. He set career records in most categories.
It's kind of again, so Let's just get this out of the way really quickly. Kyle McCord right now leads the nation in passing touchdowns. Kyle McCord, one of only a handful of quarterbacks with over 700 passing yards in the nation. Right now, through two.
I was going to say Kyle McCord, through 2 games on the season, has 300 yards passing in both of his games and 4 touchdowns in both of his games. The last Syracuse quarterback to do that was Ryan Nassib in 2012, and it took him the whole damn season.
Yes, and I think that this is. I was reading Brent Axe's takeaways from the game, obviously talking about Kyle McCord, but he mentioned something here, and I think this is really true, is that we talked about preseason, that Kyle McCord's ceiling was probably going to be Ryan Nassib, and it appears as if we're there. We are right there already, and pocket passer quarterbacks are not something that Syracuse has traditionally done. You can argue about McPherson. You can argue about McNabb. Obviously, they were tremendous pocket passers, but they also had the ability to make with their legs, and the offenses were built around that. McCord is a true pocket passer who we saw a little bit of the scrambling. We'll get to that in a second. But what I really want to call out here is what a lot of people, and you can find this on the ESPN YouTube channel. I didn't realize this, but on the ESPN college football recap show that they have, the scoreboard show, that one of the co-hosts, whose name is escaping me at the moment, was Kyle McCord's old quarterbacks coach in high school, and has been a personal coach to him for periods of time. So they did a segment on why is Kyle McCord so good? And there's essentially 2 elements to this. The first is the scheme, which we'll get to in a second.
Yeah.
But the second part of this is that McCord has cleaned up some of his mechanics without having a telestrator here, and myself not being a quarterback expert. he is getting more power more consistently across all of his throws, especially over the middle. And we saw that on the last touchdown that he threw to Oronde Gadsden, where he had a very tight window, had to hit that window very aggressively. And you break down his mechanics on that play, they look night and day compared to his Ohio State mechanics, which, again, going back to the Ryan Nassib comparison, that was Ryan Nassib's strength. That guy could hit a tiny hole in a fraction of a second, just absolutely laser arm. The second part of this is the scheme, which is essentially relying on Kyle McCord to make the right decision 99% of the time. And credit to Jeff Nixon, credit to Kyle McCord. It really is apparent that this quarterback feels confident and comfortable with every single play that comes through and is making the right decision every single play, except for the first drive of the first game. I don't think that there has been, I don't think there's been very many situations where I can look at what McCord does and say that was the definitive wrong decision. Maybe there was another option that was more difficult to execute that might have been slightly better, but his decision making has been just absolutely A+, which is something I am not used to having.
Yep.
Now, I would say it's been an absolute A, like a half of a plus. There were, towards the end of the game yesterday, we did see in the fourth quarter a couple of very bizarre either throws or reads or execution of what was going on. One on the about 15 heading in, where he just about hit one of the Georgia Tech receivers DBs in the hands, and he dropped it. And another kind of up the seam where he winged it a little high and it didn't quite execute. Neither of which were, there were other open guys on the field. Those are literally the only two in 120 minutes of football that we've seen this year that past that first drive I've had any qualms about. And this is me being the pedantic asshole because that's my job, I guess.
I'm going to do a story. I'm going to do a story later on this month about this offensive scheme, because I don't think a lot of, probably to be fair, I don't think a lot of college football fans know exactly what a pro style offense means and is. And all of a sudden, yes, this is the offense that Jeff Nixon wants to put in just because of all of the NFL experience that he has. But all of a sudden, Syracuse, along with the coaching staff of the work of Fran Brown and of Jeff Nixon and of all the other great recruiters on that staff, have brought in the players that can make that pro-style system work. Obviously, it starts with Kyle McCord, but what they've all been talking about is just you have so many other pieces as well that are around Kyle McCord that allow that pro-style system to work, just because you have so many options now in Syracuse, which we talked a little bit about last week. McCord actually has options in his receiving game that he probably wouldn't have had if the coaches didn't go out there and talk to some people about joining Syracuse and also staying at Syracuse as well, which is a marketed revelation. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 players had a reception against Georgia Tech. That's you don't see that in past Syracuse teams.
And none of those seem
again
like
under Nassib
drop off in talent. Like he targeted Umari Hatcher at least 5 times?
Umari Hatcher had 5 catches for 67 yards.
I'm glad that I arbitrarily was able to come up with that from from watching from the end zone in the dome. He's spreading the love around, and it's great to see. I don't know if we've had this many options for him.
And I think, and I think one of the things that works really well for this is that these options are flexible, but these options also have very specific roles. Like when we look at what Oronde Gadsden does, on most of the plays where Gadsden was targeted, Syracuse was running 4 verts, and it was just like the college football video game where you have the tight end lined up on the inside slot, and the goal of the tight end is not to go deep down the field. The goal of the tight end is to get in between the soft zones of coverage, turn that big ass body towards the quarterback and hit me, and I can use my body to shield it and get yards. And they just, every time Georgia Tech basically crept forward and had more guys underneath to stop the short throws, they'd hit him over the top with Gadsden on the forwards. And on the Pena side, we saw this now twice in the red zone. They will identify the man coverage, move Pena in motion, and either have him running some kind of route where he gets on a linebacker through the motion, or they're running picks and rub routes that are all based on timing going, we know Pena is going to win his matchup. McCord knows exactly where the spot's supposed to be. And again, credit to McCord for making the throws. Credit to the receivers for being able to execute on what essentially comes down to timing and trust. But also so much credit to Jeff Nixon for instilling, Christian, to your point, a true pro-style offense that does not rely, I thought Fran said it really great in his press conference. We're not relying on one guy, one set, one look. We are just relying on our players to make the right decisions. And that is such a shift from every single coach that has been at Syracuse, at least in my time of being a fan. And I do think that you're seeing how much this potential unlocks, but it just relies on having so many pieces that, to be fair to the predecessors, they were not able to get the depth of weapons to Syracuse the way that Fran has in a singular offseason between retention and recruiting.
And I was listening to this on one of the ACC Network pregame shows, and it was one of EJ Manuel, Eddie Royal, or Eric McLean who brought this up on the ACC Network. They said that you can almost see the trust between Kyle McCord and Fran Brown / Jeff Nixon. That level of trust is probably only seen in one other place in the entirety of football, and that's in Kansas City with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. This Syracuse coaching staff has the belief, the confidence, and the trust to allow Kyle McCord to essentially run the offense, especially when it gets into chaotic situations, since he is essentially an 11th coach for this team. And when you have that type of freedom and the type of confidence to give a player that type of freedom, it's amazing already what we've seen. And to your point, Andy, so many of this past Syracuse coaches we've seen, it's about, okay, you guys are playing the style of football I want you to play. In this Syracuse system, it's okay, here's the general idea of how we want to play football, but we're going to give you the keys to the car and let you drive it.
Yeah, and it's awesome to see and awesome to actually have them executing on it. Because one thing you always worry about when a situation like that happens and when one of your players is handed the keys to the car is that they're going to drive it off a cliff. And it seems like McCord really has that composure and depth of understanding of what's going on to not do that. Andy, you mentioned the Arande on the, that 15-yard drag underneath the verts. And I believe that's known as the Georgia Tech after this game. We'll probably talk about that later. But there's nothing to piss me off more watching that. But to see us be able to execute something similar is great. And to watch Pena become this touchdown machine, I don't know. He's got to be close to leading the nation. He's got
it's also it is really funny that every successful passing play in this game was a post route.
Oh yeah. They saw something on film and nobody adjusted it.
Well, I'll give Georgia Tech some credit here. The Syracuse came out just running screens on screens on screens, and that was clearly something Nixon and the offensive staff saw where Georgia Tech was susceptible to that. And that got abandoned pretty quickly in favor of the more vertical passing attack, which I think this shows the coaching staff's ability to have multiple game plans ready, which is not something, again, it's a credit to the offense, but it's not something that we've seen before. And again, we'll talk about the second half performance and what did happen there. But I just continually come away from this coaching staff each week of the preseason that we saw through the TV show, each week through the game now, where we're learning more. Sometimes more data points aren't good, as we saw kind of in the last year or a couple of years ago with the new offensive staff and Garrett Schrader, where things looked great through 2 weeks, and then in week 3 the wheels came off once Schrader got slightly hurt and everybody started scheming up against it. I've never felt more confident in a coaching staff at Syracuse than I do about this one, which is something that I did not want to let myself believe with a new staff coming in with all of the challenges that come with modern roster building and staff assembly.
And here's a secret second added factor that's not getting talked about much because it's not pretty, but it turned into a reason why also Syracuse was so effective and why they could go also away from the screens. Syracuse has actually 2 capable running backs for the first time in ever. Like LeQuinn Allen and Will Nixon both averaged over 4 yards a carry. And that's decent enough where opposing defenses have to really, really respect them.
Right.
And so because of that, because of that, what allowed the Syracuse passing attack to have so much success is because in the second quarter, so many of the big plays that you saw from Syracuse came off play action. And because of that, the play action was so effective for Syracuse because you had to respect at least that Allen and Nixon could chip away at this Georgia Tech defense, ironically, which is what we thought Georgia Tech was going to do to Syracuse.
Yeah, to look at the box score, you've got LeQuinn Allen, 15 attempts, 83 yards. Will Nixon, 9 attempts, 40 yards. Team at 149 rushing, 4.2 yards per carry overall. I mean, I'll take that any day of the week, especially out of two backs they're not diametrically different, but they definitely run very differently. And Allen showed also with his 5 receptions for 50 yards that he's got that other dimension to him as well. So,
remember we were talking about all of that the past 2 years, 3 years with Sean Tucker also?
Uh-huh.
It's good. Yeah. It's good to see that getting into action now.
Imagine Sean Tucker in this offense.
Oh my God. And it goes also to the point that you pointed out, Andy. That's something that Fran pointed out. Ironically, I was the one who asked him about the pro style question in the press conference where you got that answer from, which was, like you said, Syracuse isn't limiting itself to one offensive set. So you see so many unique sets from Syracuse. You saw that weird, monster package ninja set with the 2 linemen out wide, but then you had so many 2 tight end sets. Syracuse opened up with multiple 2 running back sets on the first drive. Like, this is a Syracuse offense that, and again, goes to Andy's point as well, is so flexible and malleable that they can adjust when needed to the situation that it requires.
Yeah, and it wasn't just 20 personnel either. It was, there were multiple times where they had multiple tight ends in. There was one point where we had a 12. I think we had a 22 personnel at one point.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I remember that. The best part also, I remember seeing Dan Valori running out, and then all of a sudden looking down and looking back up, and Syracuse was in power I.
Yeah.
I'm like, holy crap, it's the 2000s.
Yep. Hey, he said he wanted to play old school football. I don't know if that's what he meant, but hey, we're here. We're here for it.
It was actually so refreshing to see not only power I, but single back under center as well.
Yep. Yeah, there were a lot of different sets that got trotted out there. It was.
I think that what's been really interesting, and Steve, I think you're thinking this, like when Christian was mentioning, like, have we seen an offense like this before with the 2 running backs, with a pro style quarterback and whatnot? This team feels a lot like the 2012 Syracuse Orange offense, where that was a backfield that had Jerome Smith with over 1,000 yards, Prince Tyson Gully with over 800 yards. Ryan Nassib ended up passing for what was then one of the ended up getting 3,700 yards passing, which at that point in time was a record before Dino came in and his offense kind of rewrote a lot of the history books. But that was a team where, from the reception point of view, there were only 2 players that got more than 45 receptions, and that was Alec Lemon and Marcus Sales. Like, that was very much 11 personnel, if you were lucky, kind of deal here. There wasn't the depth that this team has, which I think is really promising. And what I remember about that 2012 team is that offensive line stayed healthy for the whole year and had what I believe is to be multiple NFL players on that line, which was kind of the foundation for maybe a little bit more of a one-dimensional offensive attack from a scheme perspective. So again, not exact one-to-one, but if we're looking for comparisons and like what is the ceiling of this team, like that 2012 team, even though they did not win as many games as Dino Babers' record-setting team, I believe the 2012 Syracuse team is the only team in the Bill C SP Plus era to finish top 25 at the end of the season in SP Plus, which is, again, I know people don't love those, like the fancy stats that don't line up one-to-one with the wins and losses, but like I would take that 2012 team over any modern Syracuse team that I've seen. And that's specifically because it was more pro style. There were more players on that team that you just knew could play at the next level.
Yeah, that line, if I'm remembering right, was, I think, Mackey, Zach Jabane, don't know who the other guard was, and then Hickey and Pugh. And, was it Ivan Foy, maybe? Sorry. Yeah, hitting the weird brain for offensive lineman names. But that team itself was, when you were talking about a coach that I haven't had confidence in like this, that year of Marone and where we kind of realized where he was going was the last time I felt like that. And yes, this is way too early with 2 games into the season, but that's the last time I've had this much faith in a coaching staff that they're going to make the right decision and not going to immediately find some way to screw it up. And I say this and couch it now because we are so early in a season with a coaching staff that is very young and has only had 2 games under their belt against decent competition, but there's a lot of season left. We're going to find a way to screw something up. It's Syracuse, but
I mean, that 2012 team also screwed up a lot of things as well.
They did.
So this ties in very, very nicely to the PFF grades that Steve and Andy have not seen yet. I'm going to give you 4 numbers: 88.4, 88.0, 87.5, and 81.6. One of those is an overall grade. The other 2 are individual grades for either pass blocking, run, or run blocking. Where do you think they're going?
Are we talking all team grades or personal?
I'm talking about offense specifically. One of those numbers is an overall grade for the offense, and the other 3 are individual grades for pass blocking, run, or run blocking.
So the overall, I'll take the low one, weirdly.
That is not correct.
Okay.
I will give you the hint. It is the high one of 88.4.
Okay. All right.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean,
And
I'm
that
assuming
one
that McCord has the second highest one for passing.
That is 88.0 is passing for Kyle McCord, and 88.4 is Kyle McCord's overall offensive grade. Now, your other 2 are 87.5 and 81.6. And I know none of you are going to get this in a blue moon, so I'm just going to say it right now. The 87.5 is Mark Petrie's pass block grade of 48 snaps. And of 48 snaps, the 81.6 is the pass block grade of Demetrius Weatherspoon.
Okay, I was going to go with Weatherspoon on the pass blocking because that backside was just sealed all day. I wasn't sure which, but yeah, wow. It's nice to have an offensive line, isn't it, guys? Haven't I been preaching this for a while?
Not to be outdone, John Ray Reed had a 78.2 pass block grade, and Savion Washington had a 67.5. The only bad person was Jacob Bradford, who had a 43.8.
Which I could see, like, that was definitely where any of the pressure that came was coming, but it was also something they were able to pick up and account for.
Like,
I'll take it all day.
Yeah.
So much has been talked about from this coaching staff about how the most improved points on this team were the wide receivers and the offensive line, and I think you're seeing that just in spades on this offense, because through 2 games of the season, we really haven't had to worry about the offensive line. which is a remarkable change in feeling from the past couple of years.
Yeah, it's a diametric shift.
McCord got sacked once, and that was on a play to begin the second quarter. And the running backs didn't get stopped behind the line too much or at all that much. This is an offensive line that has actually backed up the praise from the coaching staff of being one of the most improved units on this team.
Georgia Tech had a total of 3 tackle for losses, including that sack. There were only 2 other tackles for loss.
And I'm pretty sure one of those was on the Pena jet sweep.
I think so.
And I think the other one was the other one might have actually been in the Ninja Monster package set.
That went horribly wrong, but was awesome to see.
Yeah.
And for anyone that doesn't know what Christian, like if you were listening to the game or couldn't see it or whatever, what he's referring to is the offense lined up with both tackles split wide on the line of scrimmage and then covered by their receivers with somebody in the slot in between them outside the hashes. This is like they were close to the sideline with 3 down linemen in the middle and the normal backfield. So you can imagine the confusion when everybody around me was like, what the hell is going on? And I'm like, I was like straight up Leo DiCaprio.
Like, I've seen that package in the video game.
Yeah. It's like, I've seen that before. Oh, we had some, like, I can remember back at Union, we had some stupid package like that where, like, the tackle lines up.
Also, we didn't get to see it because of a delay of game penalty, but there was a Wildcat package.
Yep. There was a lot of wrinkles they threw into the game plan, and they weren't afraid to show things.
Pro style offense.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is you can show things and then you have a bye week this week to make up new crazy shit.
And also, something that I talked about with McCord in between the week is that when they're looking at game tape, and especially when they're looking at installs for packages, a lot of the install that they were looking at was looking at NFL tape. So you can imagine with a week and now maybe even 2 weeks of NFL tape that is coming out from this past weekend for what the install is going to be like with a bye week right now.
I at Andy's face and just
I hope they don't watch any of the Steelers Falcons tape. We can just burn that and pretend it never happened.
Oh, the Arthur Smith Bowl.
That was bad. That was like watching last year's Syracuse team, a quarterback who had no idea what he wanted to do other than run the ball. Anyways, we're not going to get into that.
Right, that's a game where somehow 18 and 10 points get put on the board and nobody quite knows how.
Yeah, exactly. But I just think I think that this is, again, we'll probably talk about this a little bit more in the back half of the show. I think it's really interesting. The bye week coming as it does feels weirdly perfect. I'm not usually a big proponent of early season bye weeks, like before week 4 or 5, but I do feel like this is kind of perfect for that reason. And I really like the way that Syracuse's season is set up from here. Something else that I really like the way that Syracuse is set up with is home field apparel. Your one-stop shop for everything cozy, warm. It's starting to get fall. We had a wonderful day where I'm able to wear this vintage SU long sleeve courtesy of Home Field Apparel today, and I felt perfect. Home Field Apparel has Syracuse. It has so many other teams. Their countdown to kickoff collection has finally come to an end, as we now know all of the bomber jackets, all of the coach jackets, all of the different platinum boxes that you can get for someone in your life who loves college football, or you just buy it for yourself. Treat yourself. It's a good time of year. Syracuse is 2-0. It's time to celebrate. If you're interested in getting any of these hoodies, jackets, collectors boxes, you can do so at homefieldapparel.com, and make sure you use promo code NUNES24, NUNES24, for 15% off your first order at Home Field Apparel. That's NUNES24, NUNES24, for 15% off your first order at Home Field Apparel. They are continuing to just churn out all the good stuff. Makes me really happy. And one of the things that I thought fit like a glove was Fadil Diggs at linebacker. Did not know I wanted that in my life. Did not know I needed that in my life. Now that it has happened, I'm going to be sad when it stops happening, mostly because it was really fun. I think that's like the nicest thing I can say about the defense from this past week.
So Fadil Diggs is only credited with 7 pass rushing snaps on PFF. That's the bad news.
If you told me that at the beginning of the season, I would have told you were absolutely insane.
Yes. The good news in those 7 pass rushing stats is graded in the pass rushes on 93.5.
Oh, okay. That's fine. I'll take that.
He does have a good tackling grade from PFF of 80.3, which is second on the team to Clarence Lewis's 80.4 tackling grade.
That's the same Clarence Lewis that was at the bottom of last week?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take it. That's called a turnaround, folks.
That is indeed called a turnaround. When you think that we thought, like I mentioned, that this Georgia Tech team would run all over Syracuse.
Yeah.
And the only player who did that was Haynes Kings on 2 touchdown runs.
And I think that, I don't want to say that was by design, but I feel like watching what they did, it felt like they wanted to shore up the rest of everything while still attempting to spy him. And if he got his, it is what it is at that point. It's the old, you're not going to beat the Chicago Bulls by shutting down Michael Jordan. You're going to let him get his and hope you can beat everybody else. And it worked outside of, the only reason, I think we mentioned it before, the only reason this was close is because of special teams. Overall, the defensive game plan, I thought, worked quite well, especially after the recovery from the abysmal whatever mess that was last week. The other thing I wanted to bring up with you two, because I know we talked about it preseason, was the shift from 3-3-5 to 4-2-5, and how when basically we were told Elijah Robinson was going to run a 4-2-5, that we also mentioned, hey, this is effectively the same thing we were running last year, and there's a very good chance that we're going to see flexibility and alterations to this, and maybe even run a 3-man front. Guess what we did this game, guys?
We ran a lot of 3-man front.
There were a lot of points where I'm like, oh, there's only 3 guys down. Weird. This is something new. Oh,
and I think part of that also was the move for Diggs to linebacker because of the Marlowe injury. Of course, we haven't actually had a pod since that was actually truly confirmed how long that will be out. He's going to be out for 6 weeks, or at least that's what Fran says, is that he's hoping to have him back after 6 weeks. He was on a scooter at the game with that right leg heavily casted up. Not sure how big or how high up the cast went, since it was over his it was under his sweats. But what that did give us, like Andy said, was Fadil Diggs at linebacker, because Diggs became the QB spy on King, which is what Marlowe Wax and Michael Jones have excelled at, and Zaire Franklin have excelled at for so many years. And when you think about it, 2 of those guys are NFL guys. Another one is most likely going to be in Wax. And Diggs is probably not going to be a middle linebacker spy guy in the NFL. But it was fun watching him doing it against Georgia Tech. And for this next couple of games, it'll be fun to watch him do it again. And it's so interesting to see what a defense also has when it's given freedom and personality as well to it. Because while the 3-3-5 did have, its ability to make flashy plays, I think especially when you saw it under Rocky Long, there was a bit more need of structure that he wanted, just because it's, probably a large factor of that is because it's his defense.
Yeah.
Now, you've got coaches like Elijah Robinson and Jeff Nixon and Fran Brown and Nick Williams to say, hey, guys, this is the general idea. You've got the keys.
Yeah. And it's, similar to what we talked about for the offense. Great to see that, hey, go do your thing. We're going to trust you to do your thing. one of the people in the preseason that got talked about doing that was Justin Barron. And we saw him in, I don't know what you want to call that role. Most of, we keep calling him 3-5. It was kind of like a 3-2-6 because the personnel.
They're calling him. They're calling it the star is Fran's terminology for it. So
yeah, that's what it is in the depth chart. I remember looking at that at week 1. I turned to Chris Carlson sitting next to me while we're reading that. I'm like, what does that mean?
He's the what? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was. I think that there was a couple of things that were interesting in one of the post-game articles on Syracuse.com. They mentioned that Barron was really working with Fadil on the transition to linebacker. And to Steve's point about the flexibility and like 3 down linemen versus 4, 3-2-6 or whatever, you basically had Fadil and Barron being, you are long, lanky, athletic men. Go and cover a space on the field and don't let anybody get past you, which I thought was really interesting because there were multiple times where Georgia Tech was trying to stretch the field horizontally, whether it was in the screen game or in stretch run and outside runs. And that's really where Diggs and Barron came into play the best, was in tracking down and eliminating those plays from being a consistent threat. Like, I think there were a couple times where Syracuse's poor tackling allowed for those plays to work the way that Georgia Tech intended. However, when Barron or Diggs were involved, the plays got wrapped up fairly quickly and ended up being a negative or very small positive gain. And I think that is something to keep an eye out here with the team as a whole, because of the tackling increases. It does seem as if teams will have to beat Syracuse up the middle, which honestly, like from a football schematic standpoint, that is a lot easier to prepare for versus a team that's going to try to beat you horizontally and use the open spaces on either side of the field. It forces the offense to be a lot more one-dimensional. It allows the defense to more easily prep and scheme. But again, it was really only Diggs and Barron who were consistent on those outside in space tackling plays, and credit to both of them who had multiple plays where they were, tracking down guys who I did not think they could catch up to.
How many times over the past few years have we said Syracuse is awful against the outside run?
And the thing is, yes, all the time. But the thing with that is, it's not even the tackling in my brain that's bad. And this is going to sound weird.
It does.
The grade probably shows abysmal tackling, but there's no way to really put on the fact that it's pursuit angles that are the actual issue, and that they don't know how to put themselves in a position to make the tackle.
Yep.
I don't think the actual tackling form is the issue. I think it's them not of being able to, in any way, shape, or form, find a way to put their body in a position to make the tackle.
Yeah.
Because there was one cutback where was a sweep left. Georgia Tech's running back had it out wide, immediately cuts it in, and literally runs past 5 guys.
Yeah.
All of which hips were turned the exact wrong way. And I was just like, I don't know how this. My wife looked at me. She's like, what are they doing? I was like, I have no answer for you. Like, I know what they're doing. I don't know why they're doing it. And that's the thing, is I guarantee this off week, they're probably going to be working pursuit angles quite a bit.
Steve, can we get your analysis on what Fadil Diggs did to that poor guard on that 4th down play?
There is no analysis. That man is going to love film this week.
I mean, from an offensive lineman perspective, is that just Fadil was faster and stronger and better leverage? Like, I never seen somebody get blown up like that.
No, and that was somebody in the Disloyal Idiots verse. I don't know if we have a name for our people, but or the Noons verse, like we need to have a GIF of that. Like we need to find a clip of that. Because no, there's nothing. Words cannot describe-
Syracuse Athletics, by the way, has hired a Gen Z intern for social media
Oh yeah.
because they have been firing off memes on the Q's football Twitter and Instagram. And they posted 3 separate angles of the Fadil Diggs 4th down stop. And the 4th picture is the meme picture of the scared hamster meme.
Oh, I need to now look this up.
It's incredible.
I did love the. Oh, here we go. Oh my lord!
Yeah.
Steve has found it.
Every time I see that, yeah, it's just here. You know what? We're using modern technology.
Modern technology allows us to share the screens that we have. Again, if you're not watching on our live stream of choice, please on Twitch Disloyal Idiots, YouTube Disloyal Idiots, or on the Fans First Sports Network Facebook and Twitter pages, where you can see Fadil Diggs getting right into the grill of Fran Brown.
Oh,
It's just.
Yeah, no. I literally, like I said, there's no analysis for this. It is just, oh my god, you got blown up.
Just destroyed that poor man's soul.
Also, if you see right now, the look on Fran Brown's face is that of pure joy. That is what elation looks like.
Well, I think that this dovetails really nicely into what I think is
Scared
the biggest.
hamster.
Scared hamster. What I think is like the biggest takeaway of this game is that not that Syracuse knocked off a ranked opponent, not that Syracuse offense is clicking at a high clip. We finally got an indication, like we know what Fran has said he's wanted things to be, but we got the indication of what Fran wants the Syracuse program to be identified by. And this is in the post-game press conference. Fran admitted that he took some of Brett Key's words from Key's Monday presser personally, where Key said that this game wasn't about X's and O's. This game was about being the physical team from 12 to 4 on Saturday. And Fran, again, I know, Christian, you have some more insight into how much Fran used this for motivation. But it's really like Fran said multiple times that he was feeling emotional during this game because he thinks that challenging Syracuse's toughness in any way, shape, or form is an affront to him and an affront to the entire program at its core. And I think that we know that coaches like Dino, like using Dino for an example, Dino wanted Syracuse to be known as a difficult offense to play against. He wanted you to come up to Syracuse and say, not looking forward to coming to the Dome and having to run at the pace necessary to keep with that offense. Schaefer wanted to be known for having an aggressive defense, a defense that would blitz at all times and would force offenses into playing more simple. Fran wants Syracuse to be the toughest game on your schedule. Fran wants every single opponent that plays Syracuse to say, that is the game where we are going to get hit harder than we get hit in any other game. And this is the game where my team is going to need to be mentally ready for the physical beating that's about to come. And I know that Fran's like, God, he's got Dart, he's got all these other things, but I do think it's really interesting to hear and see that when push comes to shove, Fran is going to value that toughness and that physicality in a player, in a system, in a coach's philosophy more than anything else. And I do think that is something that will play very well to this Northeast football fan base. This is also something that I think I'm a little bit surprised about with Fran, because when you talk about what he, like the hibachis in the Dome, like toughness is not necessarily the first word association with that. But it shows that, like, I do think that I can understand more and more why Wildhack and other members of the Syracuse football decision committee said, like, this is the type of guy that we want leading our program, because they want Syracuse and toughness to be synonymous for every single person out there, which I did think was interesting, and the way that he apparently really did not like Brent Key's words.
It takes me back to something that Andy pointed out right around the initial hiring of Fran Brown, and when Fran Brown was hiring and assembling his staff. Something that Andy pointed out was Fran Brown was going out to guys who were essentially like, hey, you've been overlooked. I'm going to give you your chance. And that's your chip on your shoulder. I'm going to give you your chance. And you've got to come with that attitude of that chip on your shoulder to prove yourself. And it feels like that resonated with his entire team, because that specific clip that Fran was talking about, he told, and the players were saying that he played that clip over and over and over again during practice this week. And from what you could tell, like, I don't recall seeing Oronde Gadsden that animated ever when he was talking about that clip in the post-game press conference, because it feels like out of all the players that were there at that dais, it was McCord, Diggs, Gadsden, and Pena. He was the one who most resonated with that message of this being a physical game and not being an X's and O's game. And it just felt like it's everyone on this team, much like when Fran started assembling his coaching staff, just needs a little bit to remind them, hey, you're playing with a chip on your shoulder, because these people don't believe that Syracuse is going to necessarily be the toughest of tests. And to see Oronde that animated, really, really surprising.
And Oronde, I think he had to know, like, it definitely was part of the game plan going in. The whole first quarter, they didn't even look to him.
Yeah.
Like, McCord was slinging it to everybody else, including 2 scores to Pena. I'm pretty sure the entire game plan to start was let them put a man and a half on Oronde and open everybody else up, and then once they have to start covering them, start utilizing them. And, he finished with 6 catches for 93 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, it all worked out, but he was, turned on at a point, and then that emotion and that ridiculous talent kind of showed itself.
It should, yeah. And again, McCord said it all the time. It's like, it's an unfair matchup anytime Gadsden goes out on the route, because he's too fast and too big for most linebackers. He's too big for most safeties. Like, it's unfair.
It's one of those things too. Like, the Kyle McCord was fired up. Like, I mean, they've been posting the memes of him calling Georgia Tech like bleeping soft, and
the
there's
sideline that he
a spike,
15 for, but
he should have gotten 15 for
about that, because I was looking right down that sideline and I was like, I looked at my wife, I was like, that's a penalty.
He should have got. He said that on the post game also, and Fran did. It's like he got lucky. He should have gotten 15 for that.
Well, yeah, I mean the refs were nothing but inconsistent to not to bring that up, especially in a win, but it was just like, what? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Before we talk about the not fun parts about this game, I think that the bow on it is that this is the first coin flip game that Syracuse has of many, many, many coin flip games on this schedule. If we look at SP Plus, pretty much every opponent outside of Holy Cross and Stanford from here on out are within 10 points of our S&P ranking, above or below us, which means that all of those games are going to be roughly, from a projected spread standpoint, a 1-score game going one direction or the other. This is good to see that Fran found a way to get this team that little bit of extra that they needed because of things that happened that really shot themselves in the foot. Bill C's SP Plus also does my new favorite thing, which is the expected margin, aka if this game were to be played 1,000 times with the stats and everything that we see here, what should have the result been instead of what was it? And as Christian mentioned off the top of the show, Syracuse was the dominant team here. The expected margin for this game was Syracuse to win by 8, not to win by 3. And a big reason that this game was much closer than it should have been was because of the inconsistent refereeing and special teams. Inconsistent refereeing you can't control. Special teams you most certainly can. And I'm not going to lie. I think I'm most upset about the onside kick, but it's that one. There's the blocks are just especially infuriating.
The onside kick to me, from what, again, this is me from the dome. I did not go back and watch this. So you guys have seen it many more times, many more angles than I have. That's why immediately I texted the Slack saying, did Villari get knocked down or knocked into that ball?
I will admit I have not seen that multiple times either because, like Steve,
Right,
I was in set dome.
Too. Like, in my brain, when I saw it live, I saw everybody lining up and I saw Villari getting knocked into where the ball was or falling down and the ball hitting him. Because they showed the one replay on the dome Jumbotron thing. When that happens, it is what it is. You know, yes, you're supposed to fire until 10 yards, but what are you going to do at that point? Like, if you have he may have been trying to get out of the way and got knocked into it. Like, there's a lot of things that can happen. That is a bit of a fluke. Yes, it made a lot of difference, and I'm sure there's plenty of things coaching wise they can use to correct that. But to me, it was more the kickoff out of bounds, the blocked field goal. Was there a block punt too?
There was a block punt. That's the one that infuriated me the most because it felt like it was the seas literally parting open in front of Stonehouse.
Yep. And,
it felt like that was one of the most obvious blocked punts. You could see it coming from 5 miles away. You knew that punt was getting blocked. And
Stonehouse should have gotten that off quicker, but also when they're in that quick, it is what it is. What are you going to do? I don't know. Overall, every time it seemed to me that every time there was something that went wrong to the extent that I was actually disappointed in it, it was only on special teams this week. And that is almost infuriating when it is something that should be correctable. And it has, Stonehouse and Denneberg are experienced players. We're not talking about like guys just thrust into it. So,
and let's also remember that Syracuse has followed this trend of most of the people who are out there on special teams are defensive starters.
Yeah.
So, and blocking wise, you're not putting too many backup offensive linemen in there to block either.
Right.
So, and their hands team was, there were a couple of people that you might not think would be on there, but Rhonda Gadsden and Dan Villari are on there.
Right.
So, these are people you expect to just perform special teams the way they should be performed.
Yeah, as another facet of the game.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think
the only special teams blunder that you put on the quote unquote specialists is the kickoff out of bounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is, I'm glad that they have the bye week. Special teams are going to get extra work. There's going to be extra detail paid to it. I don't think it'll happen again, but it's worrisome when it happens in a game like this, because that's the kind of stuff that swings a game one way in a way that you're not happy about. I am pretty amazed that Syracuse ended up winning this game in spite of all of that.
Because like Andy said, there are so many 50-50 games on this Syracuse schedule that are left. And you need to be winning at all 3 facets of the game in order to give you a shot at a chance of winning those games. Since it's you can take a look at Bill C's expected win percentages and all you want, but we all know football isn't that fair. So
exactly,
you have to win all 3 phases in order to give yourself any edge you can.
Right. So like let's play the Bill C SP Plus game. Right now on the schedule, Holy Cross and Stanford are both below Syracuse and SP Plus by a pretty significant margin. Syracuse has a positive team rating of 0.5. To kind of give you a concept, the difference between Georgia and Texas, which are the top 4 teams, difference is about 3 points. So if you think that, to kind of give you context, if you think playing Georgia versus Texas would be a close game, we're looking at about a 3-point difference. Syracuse opponents within a 3-point difference: Pittsburgh, UNLV, NC State. Then you get to Boston College, who's only a little bit higher than them. Then further up, you have Cal and Virginia Tech. Like, those are all teams within 5 SP plus points of Syracuse, with Miami being really the only team that's demonstrably better than Syracuse right now. So you're looking at 2 wins left on the schedule in terms of, will Syracuse be definitively favored? Then you've got a whole bunch of coin flips. And again, Syracuse only needs to win 2 of those to go to a bowl game. But the excitement around the program leads me to believe that a 6-6 season would be underwhelming. So,
yeah, I think that this Georgia Tech game was one of those coin flips that most people had chalked up as a loss going into the year.
Yes.
So to get that, now we're putting early perceptions into a different bucket of, okay, now we're thinking about the season differently. And Syracuse fans have bit themselves numerous times by doing this, myself included. Stanford, Holy Cross, and we're sitting at, if those hold serve, and we're sitting at 4-0 going into UNLV, who, mind you, just put up 72 yesterday. They beat Utah Tech, for whatever that is, 72-14.
It's a football powerhouse, Utah Tech. Holy moly.
Yeah. Now, on the flip side, NC State got absolutely
molly-whopped.
So, like, these coin flips are, like, by the time we play these teams, we will have a much better feel for who they actually are. Like, who knows if that was a fluke, but, Pitt eked one out against Cincy, right? So going into those first 7 games, you've got, like, all right.
We've really run that Dennis Green quote, like, to its ends.
Oh, 100%. 100%. But it's true.
Yep. And I think that it's going to be fun, mostly because, man, I don't remember who said it, so I'm really sorry. I don't remember if it was the Split Zone Duo or the College Verbal, but they essentially were like, look, close games come down to the quarterback. Close games come down to which team has the higher ceiling players. And as we have just spent the last hour talking about, Syracuse has a really high ceiling player in Aronde Gadsden. Fadil Diggs looks like he is a high ceiling player. And then Kyle McCord, who, as we talked about at the top, is on pace to set potentially Syracuse records for his type of quarterback that were school records, 10, 12 years ago.
482. Keep that number in your mind. 482. That is Ryan Nassib's singles game passing record.
Yep. We got a shot somewhere in there. Let's see what Holy Cross does. He could do that in a half against Holy Cross.
I'm calling it. I'm calling it right now. The UNLV game. UNLV's defense is 98th in S&P Plus. Their offense is top 30. That game is going to be a shootout in a climate-controlled environment.
So, does that mean Syracuse gets to play with the UNLV slot machine?
No, that's
man.
That game's gonna be that's gonna be a thing. I know you're out there for it, right, Pregs?
I am going to this game now. It was originally me by myself, and I've convinced 3 other people into joining me on this endeavor. Look, I'm just saying I still have a couch in my room that I am not paying for. So it could be yours. But I'm just like looking at that game. I feel, and again, we don't need to, we're gonna have an off week next week. We're gonna talk about more of these things. I'm just like looking at this bye week coming up right now, and it couldn't be more perfect for exactly what we need of like take away from this Georgia Tech game, what we need to take away, get everybody healthy for that big Friday night game against Stanford. That'll be a good, you still have to take them seriously. They're an ACC opponent. Then you have the Holy Cross homecoming game to get ready for another Friday night game against UNLV. That'll be arguably one of your toughest games on the schedule before you go into the road trip from hell, which is the ACC swing of NC
Carter
State.
Finley.
Well, that stadium has not treated us kindly. And then you go to Heinz Field, another place that Syracuse just hasn't really won at. And
mainly because Heinz Field doesn't exist anymore.
I refuse to call it whatever it's called now. It's Heinz Field to me.
You're like those people who still call Destiny Carousel.
Guys, is it weird that when you look at our schedule, the most difficult game coming up looks to be Boston College?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't like that.
The Patriots, yes.
My brain hurts a lot.
Boston College is what the Patriots expected them to be like under Jacoby Brissett.
Oh God, that's.
But
does Taylor look like they actually have a team now too? Like, didn't they just?
Jury's still out on
they
that.
Just beat
Auburn.
They beat a Hugh. They beat Hugh Freeze's Auburn, and I am of the opinion
in hospital bed or no?
Not in a hospital bed, so that's how you know it didn't count.
Gotcha. Also,
God, do you think Patriots fans would take Thomas Castellanos right now in a heartbeat?
Probably.
I mean, they won today. They're doing just fine.
It's very true. Congratulations to Jacoby.
For the record, we did mention McCord is leading the nation in passing touchdowns. Trevor Pena is also leading in receiving touchdowns.
Very nice.
Did anyone have that in their bingo card through week 2?
Nope.
Yeah, here we are, folks. Here we are.
This has been one of the best starts to a season that I could possibly imagine. And I'm kind of sad that there's not a Syracuse football game this weekend. Like, sometimes I like the break. I'm just like, okay, we need to take a break from this for a minute, guys. This week I'm legitimately sad that there's not a game.
Yeah, me too, actually. Because, I mean, and Steve, you were there also. We can actually quickly end the show on this. Because Steve was at the Dome. I've been at the Dome twice, but I've been there as a media member.
Right.
Steve, you're the only member of us 3 who have been to the Dome, the new Dome, as a fan.
Mm-hmm. Can say seats nice. Seats very nice. So it's a lot better than sitting on hard metal bleachers. Beyond that, it just seemed like the Dome. I guess I've been going there too long.
Yeah, but also I think a lot of people were concerned that the Dome would not be the Loud House anymore.
Oh no, it was loud. It was very loud. Like, to the point where I looked down and I was like, I forgot my ear plugs for my son. And I was like, oh boy, this is whatever. He'll figure it out. He's young. But yeah.
Andy, we are expecting your contribution in 12 days' time.
I literally texted you all and to anybody else who is in Syracuse listening to the show and wants to hang out with me. It sounds like I'm going to be starting the tailgate for the Stanford game on September the 20th. Also, early happy birthday, Steve. I will start tailgating. Yeah. Mine's the day before. Yours is it's a whole, there's so many September birthdays. I will start tailgating at noon on that Friday. I pinky promise you will not find me in a ditch somewhere. That's freshman year, Andy. 32-year-old Andy will be much more mature and will be face down in an RV.
Congratulations.
My friend.
I mean, that too, but there's this wonderful thing called water that someone told me about recently.
Oh, wow.
Turns out that water stuff does wonders for you.
You've hit the age where you realize that. Good work, buddy.
You've discovered water. Congratulations.
Before we do break, I do want to bring up one thing. The men's soccer is doing men's soccer things. They're 2-1-2. We're not going to mention no, we have to. It's historic. Lemoyne.
Lemoyne, again, I said this to everyone. Lemoyne is right now Jose Mourinho.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Like, it sucks for Mac and the boys, but like Lemoyne got their signature win for turning D1 by taking down Syracuse men's soccer last Monday. 1-0 early penalty that Syracuse gave up. Lemoyne promptly parked the bus and ended up holding on for the remainder of the 75 minutes or so.
Lemoyne has so many Englishmen on their roster as well. Like, it makes sense.
Oh, there you go. But they followed that up with a draw at Boston College, and then I think they're coming home tomorrow. But more importantly, the women are 6-1-1 right now.
We should wait until ACC play.
Yeah, I mean they just lost to Cornell 1-2, but they knocked off Northwestern, Siena, Mercyhurst, Maine,
and that's great. I love that for them.
But
the ACC in women's soccer, especially now with the addition of Stanford, not fun.
I won't disagree, but this is a team that last year, what did they go? 14-2 overall, I think.
This is indeed true. You make great points here.
Even if they don't look great in the ACC, no matter what, they've tripled their wins already. I'll take that.
Indeed.
So yeah.
I was gonna say we're in fall sports season. We'll have to get a full fall sports recap maybe next week, since there'll be no football to talk about. Invite some of the kids on to talk about some things.
Bring Finn on and talk soccer at some point, so that'd be a good one.
That'd be a good one for next week. Yes.
Yeah, we'll do our sports recap next weekend, since there'll be no Syracuse football to wrap up. Loving this. Loving that we're going to talk about win. Loving that we're talking about 2-0 Syracuse. Also, probably should mention some news here on a podcast medium. Top 25 poll came out. Syracuse or Georgia Tech falls out of the top 25, as you would expect. Notre Dame remains in the top 25. Northern Illinois takes the number 25 spot. Syracuse receiving votes. They were the third highest receiving votes total. So if you want to be fourth. So if you want to be pedantic, we're 29th. Great. Fantastic. I would, let's give it a few weeks and we'll see where we're at here. But again, win your early season games and you will get ranked. And that is a good thing.
Again, everyone's new favorite AP voter is Brian Howell, the camera at buffzone.com, who had Syracuse highest ranked in his ballot at 19.
Love this man.
Yeah. That sounds great to me.
None of it matters until the playoff rankings come out, so enjoy it while we got it. But I think that's a great place to end it for this week's edition of the Disloyal Idiots podcast. As always, we want to thank everybody who joined us live on Twitch. Thank you for everybody who also tuned in on YouTube TV, on Facebook. We're streaming this on Fans First Sports Network's Facebook and Twitter accounts. So thank you to the non-Syracuse people who are joining in the chat, like Mr. Woodside and Tim Lyons. We really appreciate everybody's support, and we will be doing this most nights, Sundays at 8-ish. All the caveats involved, as life tends to get in the way. I want to thank everybody who is listening to this on their podcast platform of choice. Make sure that you like and subscribe. Help us trick the AI into expanding the Ottoman Empire. Make sure that if you are listening to this on Noon's Magician, our sister site, continue to read all the amazing things that are getting put up there by all of the wonderful writers. We really appreciate that continued support, and we really appreciate you continually listening to this show. Thank you again to our sponsor, Home Field Apparel. Remember, promo code NUNES24, NUNES24, for 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com. Gentlemen, it's been a show. We are now 2-0. I don't know how to handle the optimism, but we're going to find a way. Go Orange.
Go Orange.
Orange.